Hello everyone and welcome! The 1/24 scale 1965 Shelby GT350 model car to RC conversion is back on the bench. In the last video, I got the rear end put in, but there were still a few things that I needed to address before finishing it up. So in today's video, I'm going to be finishing the rear end and talking about some of these changes that I've made. I'm also going to get the exhaust fitted and get these custom 3D printed wheels installed. I'll also be figuring out how I want to make the motor mount. As always, if you need to catch up on the progress that's already been made, check out the playlist for this project linked below in the description. With that said, let's get back to work on this GT350. As you can see, I've got the axle taken out of the car just temporarily while I make a few changes. As I talked about in the last video, these lower trailing arms were just a tad bit too long, so I went ahead and made some new one-piece trailing arms just like I had before, but they're just slightly shorter. Here's a closer look at these new trailing arms. Another thing I did was I created just a little flat spot right here. That just provides a little bit more clearance for the frame rails. Another little modification I made was to this upper link mount. As you may recall, it was limiting the travel of this upper link, not giving me the full suspension travel that I wanted. So all I did was I actually came in with a Dremel and just removed this bottom section here, allowing this upper link to move a lot more than it could before. So I physically cut that section out of this mount that I have here. However, I've made that modification digitally on the part that I'll be posting on Patreon. Obviously, I don't need this car to have a tremendous amount of suspension travel, but I do want more than what I had previously. Since that upper mount was preventing the axle from moving any higher up in the car, this modification to the mount should give me that extra bit of travel that I'm looking for. I got these new lower links installed and then glued the upper link mount back onto the chassis. So I've got the rear end put back together. I'm excited to get the wheels put on, get the body put on, and mock everything up. But real quick, I want to see if the factory rear exit exhaust is going to fit with this axle in place. This model kit includes both side and rear exit exhaust. I wanted to try and use the rear exit exhaust because I thought it might actually fit even with this MA10 axle and 3-link suspension setup, and therefore I thought it would just look cooler having the exhaust routed around the axle rather than just dumped out the side. Don't get me wrong, side exit exhaust is cool and a great plan B, but if I can have the pipes routed around the axle and suspension that I put in and still fit, I just thought that would be so cool looking. Not that it really matters, but as far as authenticity is concerned, apparently a few 65 GT350s did have rear exiting exhausts, rather than the side exit the majority of the cars had, in order to comply with local laws where some of these cars were sold. So just ignoring the entire front and rear suspension, this car is staying pretty true to the real thing. On a serious note though, it's actually pretty cool that Monogram included both style exhaust systems. Well, it's looking like the exhaust is just barely going to fit. I'm going to have to make sure that these mufflers are glued down far apart enough so that the axle doesn't rub against them. This section here does touch the panhard bar mount, but it still goes into its hole, so no issues there. The only thing I don't like is that where the pipes go underneath the axle, right now it's limiting the axle from going just a little bit lower down in the chassis. Not by much though. So what I'm going to try to do is trim a little bit on these posts on either side, and hopefully I can get it to go down just a tad bit more. But other than that, it looks like it's going to fit. I'm actually pretty excited. This is going to look really nice having this exhaust in place. So just that little bit of trimming seemed to be all it needs. The axle now sits about as low as it can. It's hitting the upper spring mount right there on that side. Now on this side, the panhard bar is coming into contact with the tailpipe. I've marked this section, and what I'm going to do is heat it up and bend it down just a bit. That should be all I need to do. I am a little concerned with the mufflers coming into contact with the axle. I'm really going to need to glue them separated as far as I can. I might need to trim a little bit kind of from these inner portions of the mufflers, but hopefully not too much. I should be able to make it work. Not super pretty, but that's all it took. I'll clean it up a little bit with some sandpaper, but now the axle can sit all the way down on these upper spring mounts. I was glad to see that the exhaust was going to fit with very few modifications being required. Once I get that painted and installed during the final assembly, I think it's going to look sweet. For now though, I'm going to pull that out, set it aside, and focus on the wheels. I'm going to be designing and 3D printing my own custom wheels for this project, but I do want them to look like the original factory wheels offered on this car, and I want them to fit the tires that were included with this model car kit. I had already designed a Krager SS inspired wheel a while back, so while not being 100% accurate, I saved a lot of time and effort simply by modifying this design to look more like the wheels seen on a 65 GT350. Here's a look at the final design and the SLA 3D printed wheels. Again, I know they're not a perfect recreation, but they're very close and they'll definitely help give that stock appearance that I want for this car. I was also very pleased to see that they fit like a glove in the tires included with the model car kit. I love how these turned out, and I didn't want to waste any time getting these mounted on the car and seeing how they look. Already they look awesome, and I know they're going to look way better once I get them painted. Now I know the suspension is sitting way too high right now. Remember, I'm going to be setting the ride height and adjusting the suspension and weight distribution once I get all of the remaining parts of the car installed and all the electronics mounted. No point in doing any of that work now until the weight of all these parts are in. The suspension seems like it's going to work great. Sufficient travel, no rubbing, not much really to say other than so far so good. I believe the final custom part I'll need to make for this build will be the motor mount. I've sat down and done a bit of brainstorming, and my plan right now is going to be to remove this crossmember piece right here that's molded in as a part of the chassis. I'm going to essentially be replacing this crossmember piece with my own sort of crossmember piece, except mine will also have a mount for this N20 motor and gear assembly to sit somewhere around here. The piece will be easy to secure using screws to the bottom of the interior tub, as there's a nice flat section on both sides, and that should put the drive shaft at a nice shallow angle. That's going to be the next step for this project. For now though, I have posted all of the STL files for all the custom parts I used in this video and in the last video over on Patreon. Link is below in the description. Thanks everyone for your patience on those. I have gone ahead and made some design tweaks to the MA10 axle halves that I talked about in the last video, which won't require you to cut as much of the model kit chassis piece as I had to for my build. As always, good luck to all you builders out there, and to everyone else, I hope you all enjoyed today's video. It won't be long now before this car will be ready for the first test drive, and I'm certainly looking forward to that, and I hope you all are as well. But that's going to be all for today's video. I want to thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.